Every Wednesday before sunrise, my trash can was on its side, scuffed like it had been in a fight it never asked for. And there was always that faint arc of tire marks feathered across the curb like a signature. Only I was meant to read. The person in charge of keeping our street orderly was the one knocking it over. Our HOA president, Beverly Crane, queen of the clipboard, and keeper of the coastal pallet, we apparently lived under 40 miles from the coast. Yeah, that happened. I moved to Willow Crest for quiet, not chess matches with a rule book. You know what I mean. My wife Dana wanted a place where Ava could ride her bike without dodging SUVs, and Noah could chalk hopscotch without someone power washing his masterpieces by dinner. The neighborhood looked postcard neat lawns, shaved to the same length, like they were drafted into service flags on Saturday sprinklers, whispering at dawn. And at first I convinced myself Beverly was just enthusiastic. Then it was the shutters, not prohibited, but not supporting the neighborhood's coastal palette, she said while writing on a form without looking up. Then the lawn, a brown patch by the mailbox during a heat wave, and suddenly it was failure to maintain community standard. Then Noah's basketball, no sporting equipment visible from the street. Then my rocking chair, not farmhouse compatible, which was funny because it was a rocking chair, and rocking seemed compatible with a front porch since the invention of wood. I swallowed it all because I don't enjoy being the guy who escalates things. I manage it for the school district. I untangle cables and teach patients with computers that mostly need someone to stop clicking for one blessed second. But there's a switch in me that flips when I see a pattern of unfairness. And once it flips, I become patient in a different way, the kind where you sit in the pocket and line up your evidence until excuses run out of oxygen. On the third week that can got flattened, I stood by the mailbox and waited while Beverly lifted grocery bags from her trunk like she hadn't noticed me there. "Morning, Beverly," I said, keeping my voice even. My bin didn't fall over by itself. She dabbed lipstick, then gave me that paper-thin smile. "They're flimsy, Marcus. Maybe get a sturdier one." "The city cuts corners." I nodded at the curb. "Or you could not hit it with your car." She laughed, not because anything was funny, but because the idea of me saying words out loud amused her. "No need to be dramatic," she said. "It's a trash can. I filed a complaint anyway." The board's letter landed soft and useless. "We appreciate your concern. We will review." And nothing changed. Ava asked why the lady with the sunglasses didn't like us, and I almost lied, then didn't, because kids smell the lies you tell yourself. It wasn't that she didn't know us. It was that she'd already decided who we were, and she had the rules to make it official. If the system wasn't going to protect us, the evidence would. So I read. Late-night forums, city ordinances, threads from people in Arizona, Ohio, Florida, all telling the same story. Cameras, notes, dates, witnesses, if you can swing it. Then I fell into a DIY hole, where a guy in Minnesota reinforced his bin to outsmart raccoons, a steel skeleton tucked inside plastic so it wouldn't tip. The raccoons hated it. My brain lit up. I'm not telling you to build a tank and call it curbside. I'm telling you, there's a difference between breaking a rule and refusing to be easy to bully. I wandered the hardware store like some folks browse a bookstore. Came home with a new city bin and a pile of parts that didn't look like much, and built quiet in the garage while the house slept. Tightening a bolt until it sets calms me the way running calms other people. By 2 a.m., the bin looked stock on the outside and held its ground like a linebacker on the inside. I mounted a small porch camera, aimed at the driveway angle, and my curb without turning the whole block into a surveillance state. tested it a dozen times. When Wednesday came, I drank coffee and watched the feed on my phone, while the house held that pre-kids hush that feels like weather on its way. At 7:43, Beverly came out in sunglasses big enough to count as shelter, slid into her silver sedan, adjusted her mirrors like she was in a commercial, and started backing out. She didn't glance at the curb. She never glances at the curb. The first impact didn't sound like plastic. It rang like a low bell, clean and honest, and I laughed into my mug before I could stop myself. Her car rocked. She hopped out storm cloud in a blouse rubbed at a scuff that didn't wipe away, then looked at the can like it had insulted her ancestors. I leaned on the post and kept my voice level. "Everything good, Beverly?" "Your bin is in the way," she said. "Same spot it's always in." I said, 7 a.m. curbside. You could teach the rule. Her eyes flicked up to the camera, just a tilt of her chin that told me she'd clocked it. "This isn't over," she said. "You'd be amazed how many people think that line is a spell that changes endings." The next week, she came out at a sharper angle, like she intended to clip it hard enough to prove something. The clang was louder, the jolt sharper, and part of her bumper decided to retire early. Tom across the street lifted his coffee and called, "You all right over there?" I held up my phone without moving. "Crystal clear," I said. Beverly's jaw worked. She looked from me to the camera, to the can, got back in her car, and left like the pavement had offended her personally. 2 days later, the letters started. Official letterhead phrases like hazardous condition and modified property and community liability language that inflates when someone feels their grip slipping. She marched into my yard, didn't wait to be invited, pointed at the can like it was a weapon. "You will replace that immediately," she said. "It's a danger." I stayed seated because sitting keeps you honest about whether you're calm or just pretending. "It's a city bin reinforced to last," I said. "If you've got a problem, take it up with the city. But just so we're clear, the only collisions on record are your car meeting my curb." On camera. She noticed the audience she hadn't invited. Priya weeding her flowers. Tom in his driveway, a couple walking their dog that suddenly needed a very long sniff, and her power behaved like a balloon. It looked big until a small pin of truth poked it. She left without slamming the door, which is its own kind of slam. At the HOA meeting, she tried to reframe it. A resident-altering city property in a way that creates risk and reputational harm. "I move we issue a violation and demand immediate removal," and she cut her eyes at me like I was supposed to argue with the concept of air. I didn't argue. I pressed play. If you've ever watched a room decide it will stop pretending you know the sound, a rustle, a cough that turns into a laugh and gets smothered, a chair inching back. The thunks echoed in that fluorescent quiet, and her face on the screen was the part she couldn't undo. "Context," she said tight. "Out of context. There's not a lot of context for hitting the same can twice," I said. The chair cleared his throat, the HOA's favorite exercise, and promised they would review. Meanwhile, I called a lawyer friend in Portland, told him what I did, and what she did, and what my camera did. He listened, then chuckled that little legal chuckle. "You reinforced a bin for stability on your property line. She hit it with a car." Marcus, breathe. I breathed. Then I did something simple. We rolled out a grill on a Sunday and set out paper plates and a cooler and let neighbors wander into a space that didn't require permission. People like Beverly count on isolation. They want you small and separate so you can be managed. We stood around a folding table while kids mapped Foursquare with chalk, and Tom retold the story about almost meeting Ken Griffey Jr., except he did meet him. And the almost is that Ken didn't make eye contact. Beverly appeared at the edge of the grass like a front moving across an empty field. "Is this a sanctioned gathering?" she asked, pen poised. "It's neighbors eating burgers," I said. "The handbook doesn't ban burgers." She looked for a head nod, a yes, a spine to borrow. None arrived. "You used rules to keep people small," I said. Not loud, just steady. "I'm not against rules. I'm against being hunted by them. There's a difference." Tom, who is not famous for understatement, said, "He's right." She left. It wasn't fireworks. It was an exhale. You feel a neighborhood exhale in small ways. String lights that stay up on a maple without a letter marigolds planted bright and stubborn chalk drawings that don't get washed off by morning. Ava sketched a trash can with superhero arms, and Noah labeled it Captain Can, because 8-year-olds are gifted branders. Did the story end there? Here's your twist. A week later, a certified letter arrived from the HOA's lawyer, a question shaped like a warning, asking for details about structural alterations to municipal property. Not a violation, not a threat, but a reminder that people can make the law say what they need when they hold the microphone. We've got a board election in 2 months. Beverly will run because power doesn't pack up just because you asked nicely. I'm going to run too, not because I want a clipboard, but because clipboards aren't scary when the right hands hold them. Maybe I win. Maybe I attend a year of meetings that should have been emails. Maybe some folks decide I'm the problem now because I didn't sit quietly. That's the cost of no longer shrinking. You become visible, and visibility makes some people itch. Here's where I land. I'm a black dad who's been told his whole life to take the safer road. I didn't build a booby trap. I built a boundary. I didn't set out to wreck her car. I set out to stop being easy to push. I stood steady, let the clang of the truth carry, and our street remembered how to breathe. Was I right to reinforce the bin, or was I baiting a collision? Should a rule book be a shield or a stick? Is neighborhood order worth the kind of fear that makes kids whisper in their own driveway? Tell me where you land. Drop a comment if you've lived under a clipboard, or if you think I went too far. Argue it out. Share your own story. Help me see what I'm missing. If this hit home, like and subscribe for more real-life showdowns, where the villain isn't a monster in the dark. It's the tiny ways people use rules to make themselves feel big. And share this with someone who needs the reminder that you don't always have to push harder. Sometimes you just have to stand steady and visible and let the room hear the truth for itself.